Here's the big error that I see marriage mentors do, is they skip this whole consequence phase, all right? They will hear a problem and they immediately jump in with let's try to fix it, when someone may not have decided that the problem's big enough to need to fix it. And so we need to dwell on that area and ask consequence questions. Let me explain this a little bit more. So here's kind of a typical scenario. You'll meet with a couple, and one of them will have an issue. I'll just use the wife as an example. So let's say the wife says something like, yes, I'd like more affirmation. My husband doesn't give me enough affirmation. You go, oh, okay. Husband, what do you think about that? And the husband goes, yeah, I guess I think that she probably wants more compliments, and I don't do that very well. And then the mentor will go into something like, well, do you think you could? Can we work on that this week? Do you hear what just happened? Wife said there was a problem. You said, husband, do you hear if there's a problem or not? And the husband goes, yep, I think there's a problem. Immediately went to a solution. Now, the husband may not really buy in, and he may not feel that this is worth his time and energy. And in that case, they'll come back and they'll probably not have done anything, and he'll be resistant and he won't be wanting to change. Okay, another way to go through this, let's dwell on the consequence phase part of it a little bit. So same situation. Wife says something like, I'm not getting enough affirmation from my husband, and so I would like more affirmation. And I go, oh, well, tell me, what does that look like? How does that impact you when you don't have enough affirmation? Well, and I don't feel loved, and I don't feel respected, and I don't feel valued. It's like, oh, okay. What happens when you don't feel valued? Well, I get kind of, grouchy, and I complain more. It's like, all right. And then do you criticize sometimes? Yeah, sometimes I guess I do. I get more critical. It's like, well, then what happens? Well, it's like, I just get grouchier. Okay. Then do you withdraw, or what happens? Well, then we'll usually have a big fight, and then I'll withdraw and I won't say anything. It's like, okay, then what happens? Well, then, we withdraw, we don't say anything. Well, what does that do to your marriage relationship? Well, I guess it makes us kind of disconnect. It's like, so then you live with a time for disconnection? It's like, yeah, and maybe we get over after a little while, but yeah, I tend to do this over and over again. It's like, so it's causing you to withdraw and to become critical. Is that what you're saying? Yes, that's what I'm saying. Okay. So husband, what do you think about that? It's like, oh, well, I didn't know that's, makes sense. I didn't know there's such a big deal to you. I didn't know it was such an issue. So because I got the wife to explain the impact in some detail, now I can go to the husband and find out, are you ready to make a change or not? Or do we need to explore this a little bit more? So what was the difference here? The difference is instead of jumping from a problem into a solution, I spent time developing and talking through what are the consequences, what's the impact on the relationship. Now this will help a couple to recognize what their patterns of behavior are and what they need to change. Then you can get into action steps, but they need to buy in first. Now, with some couples, this only takes a few questions and it isn't a lot of work. But other couples, this takes a lot, and it takes a lot of processing to think through. And it might take a few sessions like that, or a few times, or they'll try something that will fail, and you have to go back and explore once again, what is the pattern, what's the impact upon you, both to your thoughts and feelings, and then what's the impact on the relationship, and how does that make you feel, and how do you react? And so it might take a little bit of work to be able to get to that point. But ask consequence questions to help them to recognize that the problem is big enough to want to solve.